And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
Brought to you by good friends over at Skip. Welcome to another episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice, Week 20 Waiver Wire Edition. Nick Alberga, Pete Jensen, and Anna Dua with you. What a weekend for NHL hockey, Pete. Hockey Day in America on Sunday. Love that.
Absolutely, and revenge specials right left and right with the Kane and DeBrincat against the Blackhawks. Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL, and you love to see those storylines, right? They're not storylines. It's a real betting trend that Nick always pumps, but it hit in a big way over the weekend.
Yeah, you couldn't write that script any better for that game, let me tell you that. Patrick Kane with the OT winner. So that was probably the highlight of my weekend, but a lot happened, Nick. Like, there's a lot we can go over.
Yeah, I wish we could talk about that mutant Matt Rempe with the New York Rangers. I just don't know what's going to happen with him. He's got to face Ryan Reeves on Saturday. You know that's going to go down. If you're in a PIMS Hits League, maybe you look at him. But, Pete, I think we got to start with Patrick Kane. He was a big topic of conversation going into the fantasy season, obviously because of the injury. Detroit signs him, but he's been averaging over a point per game. I think if you snatch this guy up on the waiver wire, if you drafted him and outweighted the whole injury process, you're probably pretty happy sitting there right now. Detroit did a great job with that one.
They did, and I was talking about it a couple of weeks ago when we did our bold prediction for whatever it was, post-All-Star break. I was saying Detroit could really step up to the plate, deliver, and run away with this thing, and that's what it looks like what they're starting to do here. All those other middling teams, remember, it looks like right now, as of now, the Atlantic's probably going to get 5 teams in the playoffs, and one of those 5 is going to be Detroit, Anna. And it's thanks to a healthy string of Kane, DeBrincat, Larkin, Lyon, right, Seider, a lot of good secondary guys. I like this team. I like what they got brewing.
Yeah, I like that futures appeal. I'll take you on that. I don't know what to say here in the Eastern Conference, guys. It's been a tough week for my New Jersey Devils since that Stadium Series game, who I thought was going to be the biggest competitor to the Red Wings, but there's a world of a difference right now between those two teams, Nick.
Is it outside, or is it a bigger issue in New Jersey than just goaltending? Like, that's what I'm trying to quantify. And on top of that, again, you can speculate away. I think it's no secret Tage Thompson is dealing with something in Buffalo. You got to start feeling the same way about Jack Hughes. There's just something off there. And as a fantasy owner, I am very, very afraid with the fantasy playoffs around the corner.
Well, when you look at New Jersey's possession metrics on the season, top 5 in shot attempts percentage, I mean, they're doing something right here, but I mean, they've just been so inconsistent, and the back end has really been – I feel like not enough people are talking about the fact that Dougie Hamilton hasn't played since, like, November or whatever it is, and he's not going to play the rest of the season. So as much as they need to address the goaltending, the defense is a problem too in terms of letting up some of these chances to good teams. So I feel like, Nemec, Luke Hughes are coming along nicely, but it's not enough right now because they are both just too young and it's too big of a workload for them.
I feel like for the New Jersey Devils, though, they have all the pieces to be a successful team. It's not a roster I'm looking at where I'm like, okay, I understand why they're kind of underperforming here. This is just completely out of character. It seems like Tyler Toffoli is like the big producer right now for the Devils. Yeah. So if you have him in fantasy, you're probably thrilled. The thing I get worried about is every day I watch the Devils, everyone's playing on a new line. Like, there's no consistency in this team. There's no like guaranteed system. You can't even track guys playing with other guys for fantasy value. So until they figure something out, and I'm seeing like a similar team night after night, like as hard as it is for me to say, I might stay away from the New Jersey Devils right now in fantasy.
Ooh, wow. It's a roller coaster, but those Fire Lindy chants, they're back in the mix there. And the troubling times in Newark, I looked at the standings before we started this podcast, and I'm like, wow, like there's some separation in those standings, Anna. But since he is your best friend, since the last week specifically, he's been tweeting off the hook about Alexis Lafreniere. I think when it comes to the waiver wire list, I'm talking about Johnny Lazarus, by the way. Let's start with Alexis Lafreniere. He has, 3 goals in his last 3 outings? Great to see you, Alexis.
Well, I wanted to just add that nobody
yeah.
creates his own narrative better than Johnny Lazarus, and that's what he's doing here with Alexi Lafreniere.
Anna, your defense.
Okay, first of all, let's not lie to the listeners. Johnny Lazarus wishes he was my best friend, but I'll give him credit. Like, he has been like the notorious jinx. Like, anything he says on this podcast, the opposite happens. So
Fade
for him
Yeah.
manifesting this, what's happening with Laugh, I'll give him credit for it. But the New York Rangers, guys, like this past weekend, I genuinely started thinking about them seriously as a cup contender. I know everyone's been saying it. They go on this win streak, but something has changed in this team where Laugh's playing well, Panarin's consistently played well, but adding those big guys on their fourth line has completely changed what this team looks like. Now, every guy on this roster, whether it be Panarin or Laugh, is playing like they're a couple of inches taller, and they're not afraid to go out there and show their skill. And all credit to Peter Laviolette right now, guys. Like, he has turned this team around, and I think they'll be like scary heading down the stretch for sure.
I think it's very ironic to your point that a year ago we were talking about the New York Rangers, and they probably get the two biggest bona fide names at the deadline in the form of Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. And you start talking about chemistry this time around, Pete, I'm very curious to see what the Rangers do because unlike Anna, I can't get to that level where I look at that team seriously. I just haven't seen them done it when it matters most, and that's my concern. Can they do this in the Stanley Cup playoffs? The regular season's great and all, but I cover the Maple Leafs, as you know.
No, it's true, but if they have like top form Shesterkin, they could do anything in the playoffs. That's the way I look at it. That guy hasn't been himself up until this recent stretch for like a year and a half, it feels like. So when you look back to that year when he was in the MVP conversation, the Vezina, and the whole thing, like if you get that for a 20 to 25 game stretch in the playoffs, you'll be hoisting Lord Stanley's Cup at the very end. So regardless of any defensive issues, hopefully for the playoffs, they have like Ryan Lindgren healthy. I know that's a big, just glue to their defense. So when he's he's always dealing with injury, but hopefully he'll be healthy for the right time of year as well.
It's a different week. How do we feel about Philadelphia this week? I will tell you it's not great when it comes to Travis Konechny. He didn't play over the weekend, but the good news, the positive news from a fantasy angle, Tyson Foerster played over 19 minutes in both games in a top six look. Over the weekend, he had 3 goals and an assist, 4 points, 7 shots on goal. So that's a really, really good internal replacement. Other guys, Pete, I would look at, obviously, Patrick Kane, Gabe Vilardi, who we want to get to the last 4 games, 5 goals, 5 assists. He's been blistering hot. We talked about Lafreniere. We talked about Wyatt Johnson as well, Pete.
The Eastern Conference playoff race for that third spot in the Metro is so up for grabs. Like Philly with a couple injuries could get derailed. One day you like Pittsburgh, one day you like Washington, the next day you like New Jersey, the next day you like the Islanders, and they're just all maddeningly inconsistent. So I can't really put a finger on who I like the most. I would still probably lean with the Devils. If they can stay healthy down the stretch, they should probably like even New Jersey's already ahead of the Islanders now in the standings. So, I would still lean with them over all those other teams, but I don't feel too good about any of them individually.
Yeah, the Metro is just like a disaster zone right now, guys. I feel like every day my opinion changes. But Tyson Foerster, just want to say, I have been hyping this kid up on this podcast since he touched foot near an NHL rink, and it's paying off. Everyone should listen to me on that.
Yeah, it just seems like nobody wants, even New Jersey. I haven't felt bullish about that team all season long, and I just can't get to that level. I think it's a good point in bringing up Dougie Hamilton, Pete. Without him, they just haven't been the same team. They can't get a save. Every time we think they're going to win a game, they don't. I think my answer would probably be the New York Islanders, but I think they're another team in dire need of a boost. Like, they're never going to make that trade to get a bona fide stud, so I'll stop talking about it. It's just not going to happen. They plan their roster a different way to think they can win in the Stanley Cup playoffs with that team. I think is ludicrous, but they got to do something. And somebody's got to seize the day in the moment here. It's just not happening,
Right. It might just be whichever team goes out and pulls the trigger and makes a trade, right?
Sure.
Like, I know Pittsburgh they're shopping Gensel and they're asking a lot in return, as they should. I mean, right, all it takes is 1 week for them to get back into playoff contention if they string together a couple of victories or Jari another couple of shutouts or whatever they're doing out there. I don't love it, but they're still within striking distance and a big high-scoring win against the Flyers to prove that they still are hanging around in this thing.
At the very least, I'm not saying that they're going to make it into the postseason because that's a pipe dream, but at the very least, given the trajectory they're on, do the Ottawa Senators intrigue anyone here, guys? They have a couple of games on hand. They won a couple
You're
of good
not best
contests.
friends with Johnny? This is the other thing he talks about on Twitter.
Okay, well, in my defense, I've been hyping up the Senators every single week on this podcast. Okay, and he's been listening. He's an avid listener, and he decided to tweet that out without giving me any credit. I don't think they're making the postseason, but they have to be like one of the best fantasy teams you can stack from right now in this last little stretch, right?
Guys, listen. Okay. 3 fraud teams in the league. We talked about this 3 months ago. There are 3 fraud teams. One's New Jersey. We just touched on them again. The other is the Buffalo Sabres. We touch on them every week. That now's the time to pick up their players. This is what they do. They're a middling team. They're going to miss the playoffs by 4 points. And the Ottawa Senators. They can rally all they want around the Ridley Grigg slap shot, whatever. They won some games. Jacques Martin's doing a great job. But this is what the Ottawa Senators do. They win games when it doesn't matter. And they put themselves out of position to get a really, really good draft pick coming up at the Sphere in spring. Producer Bob Bender is going to be there. He's going to be fired up. Maybe U2 is there too. But I just don't believe in it. We did say a while back, Pete, and guys, I totally agree. I love them from fantasy perspective in the second half. Are they going to make the playoffs? No. But yes, Anna, to answer your question, I love the appeal there.
But Josh Norris is definitely a guy that I would look at as a must roster player for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Like, he's back on power play 1, playing in the top 6, good line mates left and right. So yeah, I feel like it's good to see him not only healthy but playing with good line mates. And like, right, he was missing so much time because of injury. You didn't know if his career was going to be in jeopardy or something. It was getting close to that point. And even when he came back, he wasn't the same player. But now he's looking like that Josh Norris that a couple years ago was like sniffing a 40-goal pace, right, Nick?
Yeah, exactly. And the other name we'll mention, too, is Shane Pinto, again, a Johnny Lazarus favorite. The other angle, and I would take, is the crease. Johnny Laz getting a lot of love on today's
We
pod,
need to stop this, guys. That's the last mention that's going to happen. Otherwise, someone's going to get, like, in trouble if it happens one more time.
Yeah, you never know. The other angle I would look at, Anna, is the crease, right? We talked about it at the time of the new coaching change, obviously, and Jacques Martin coming back into the mix there. What would it do for them defensively? It feels like they're turning a corner again. I'm just so skeptical on this team. I really want to see them do it when it matters. But obviously, Anton Forsberg's in a great story lately.
Yeah, to be honest, guys, I say this every week about the Senators. This is a fantasy podcast. Like, if we're talking fantasy hockey, it doesn't matter if they're making the playoffs or not. They're playing awesome hockey right now, and you can stream these guys for a short amount of period if you don't feel comfortable rostering them for a long time. But this team, their netminders are looking good. They have a couple of good defensemen, like Thomas Chabot's finally doing stuff, and they have 3 solid lines up front. And why would you not take any of that action in at least like a daily fantasy format at the very least, right, Nick?
Yep, you're bang on. I'm going to come at you here, and I apologize, but this is what we do on this podcast. So you're always right? I mean, that you brought that up
I'm
many
not,
times
actually.
on this podcast.
I've given out many apologies this year.
Well, the one I want you to apologize right now for is, you know where I'm going with this. They haven't won since, I think, 2022, but it's Arizona. Both you guys came on this podcast a variety of different times and said this team was making the playoffs, and they're not going to make the playoffs. 0-10-2 stretch, and then they lose Clayton Keller on Sunday, which stings. They put up a really good effort, by the way, against Winnipeg, I thought, did Arizona in that game. Fell short just again. Kyle Connor again in OT. But Connor Ingram back in the mix, 4-32, I think, again, goes without saying. You want to sell immediately on that file. It's been tough sledding the last little while for Arizona. They were in the mix for a while, though.
Yeah, listen, I also apologize because I feel like I gaslit a lot of people thinking this to be true. Like, Pete originally said, I think the Coyotes are going to be better this season. And then he hopped on and said they were going to make the playoffs too. So I feel like I'm just a terrible influence there. I don't know, man. I wanted to see playoff hockey at Mullet Arena. Like, would have been insane.
You're
this team is kind of gritty. Like, they get in, like, everyone's faces on a nightly basis. And last year down the stretch, they looked pretty good. So I was like, maybe this is the year where they're the surprise team that surprises everyone, but no, they are still the Arizona Coyotes. I will give a shout out to Michelli right now, though. That's like the one guy if you want to like go anywhere near Arizona. But yes, I'm sorry, guys. I am very, very sorry.
Apology accepted, Anna.
I don't even think you can sell on Ingram anymore, unfortunately. No, I think you got to drop him, unfortunately. But other injury news, though, like I was looking at Dallas, and I was excited. One of my preseason top rookies is in the mix finally, Logan Stankoven. That was a guy that in the WHL last year, Nick, there were only two players to average 2 points per game or better. It was Stankoven and Connor Bedard. So even if he's on the third line for a game-by-game basis, I would stream that guy here and now. Tyler Seguin's out at least day to day, so he's getting an opportunity here.
Yeah, Stankoven's a guy I've obviously been watching very, very closely the last couple of years for the Dallas Stars organization. And important to stress, too, he was the AHL leading scorer when he got called up, right? 47 games played for Texas, 24 goals, 33 assists, 57 points. So he plays 15-20 in his debut against Carolina, 3 shots on goal. I think long-term, obviously, there's a lot of appeal to the player. I'm very curious to see how Dallas looks coming up in the fall. But right now, I think they're a perennial contender, and it seems like they're rounding into form here, Anna.
They are, but like, guys, it's like the end of February. It's almost March. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Fantasy hockey is just a little bit slow. So I want to ask you this question, because every time Dallas brings up one of these guys and like Wyatt Johnston joins the squad and Stankoven joins the squad, I always wonder which team right now, like top 3, do you think is the best for a keeper or dynasty league? Because Dallas has like some sneaky upside with all the guys they have that are so young but have such high potential, right, Pete?
Yeah, they're definitely top 5, maybe even top 3 in young cores in the league, and they're contending for the cup right now, and they're probably going to remain a contender even when some of those guys like 5 years from now are no longer playing for the team, like whether it's Ben or Seguin or Pavelski. Like, it's not about those guys anymore. So, yeah, I am really excited about the young core in Dallas with Heiskanen and all these Robertson and Hintz. They're all still pretty young, so they're loaded. They're as loaded as anybody. And as much as you want to look at teams like Buffalo and Jersey and Ottawa, it's like those teams are not even in the same conversation as Dallas here and now on the ice.
There's a scouting background, too, with Jim Nill, right? Like, I think you sort of forget that. His days in Detroit, spent many, many years in Detroit, and now he's brought sort of that wealth of knowledge scouting-wise. I mean, you look at some of their draft picks over the last couple years and just the jewels they've hit on. It's been really, really impressive. And Dallas, I think, is just an under-the-radar type team that's like a bold take I'll hit on right now. I think Dallas is going to do something substantial. People are not going to expect it, but I think they're going to get one of these guys that we're talking about right now. Just have the feel of Dallas, where they have the goaltending, they have the back end, they have the depth up front, Pete.
I think they need another piece on defense, because we saw it at different points when Heiskanen was banged up. It's like they just don't have the horses behind him. Harley's been an amazing story this year, goal scoring wise, but he's the secondary guy. You know, if they deal with an injury on defense, their Cup futures appeal is in dire straits. So they need to add on defense, and Ottinger is elite, and he has a lot of unfinished business, you could say, because last year they got pretty deep in the playoffs and he didn't play well at all. So I would expect an extra motivated Ottinger this playoffs.
I talk about motivation. You talk about a team that went all the way to the Stanley Cup final last year and a bit dinged up right now, Anna. Matthew Tkachuk day-to-day. Evan Rodriguez and Nick Cousins have been elevated into a top 6 look. Florida's another stealth team when it comes to the deadline, whether it's Hanifin or somebody else. I think they're going to add. And right now, like, they have to be on my short list of Cup favorites, like top 3. I just love their brand, their style, and the way they play, Anna.
Yeah, I need to give an apology to the Florida Panthers as well. This is my making amends episode of Fantasy on Ice, because I truly thought that the run they went on last year was a little bit of a fluke run, and I was clearly very wrong, because this team looks very solid from top to bottom, and I agree, they're on my short list right now too. And I want to give a shout out to a guy who doesn't get talked about enough, and that's Sergei Bobrovsky. He was my go-to guy in the MVP race last year when, if Florida ended up winning the Stanley Cup, that was the guy I was looking at. And I thought, wow, I haven't seen this Bobrovsky in years. And it seems like he's back right now, Pete. He's playing out of this world hockey, and we never mention him right now.
Right, and it feels a lot different than it did a couple of years ago. Wasn't he tied for the league lead in wins with Vasilevsky? But you were like, oh, the team was 3 strong lines and loaded. He was a product of the team. No, he keeps games low scoring for that team now. And you know, they have the possession brand. They have the strong defense now that Montour and Ekblad are healthy, and Forsling had a little injury scare, but he's super underrated, scored a winning goal the other day when we thought he might not even play. So, you know, he's got a great defense in front of him, but this is probably the best Sergei Bobrovsky that we've ever seen, even better than those years when he won the Vezina Trophy, I think.
Yeah, it's incredible that a couple years back we were talking about like when are they going to finally buy out this contract, and now it's like he's going to play out this contract, and he's probably one of the better goaltenders in the league again, which is great to see from the Florida perspective. And I'm happy we're on their crease because I think Anthony Stolarz is a guy who never gets credit. I know he's the backup there, but I think I love him from a DFS standpoint. If you got a guy and he's starting, I love the look. You look at the numbers: 10-5-2, 1.97, and 925. I think this is exceptional for a variety of reasons in Florida. B, they got a really good, solid backup, and they don't have to rush things with Spencer Knight. Like, he's coming. At some point in time, Spencer Knight's going to be in the NHL, I would envision, over the next couple of years. But to allow him to mature the way they've been able to this year, I think is a pleasant story, considering where it started last year, where he was like a 1B, had to be a 1B with Bobrovsky, and now they could sort of filter him in when they want to. Stolarz has been a great story for me, too.
Yeah, Florida's in a really good spot, guys. Even with injuries, I'm not scared about this team, and that's when you know that they could be serious contenders. Since we are talking about backup goalies in Florida, I'm very shocked that Pete hasn't mentioned his boy JoJo's performance against the Devils. Like, I was waiting for that to come up, and it seems like Pete's forgotten about him. He left him behind.
I'm not rostering him in fantasy again just yet, but no, he's hanging around for sure. It's good to see him sticking in the NHL, but that Atlantic Division's starting to look a little bit more formidable lately, especially like with what the Leafs are doing, right, Nick? And one guy I wanted to bring up after their big win against Colorado, I wanted to bring up Tyler Bertuzzi. He's a guy I was super high on in the preseason and has fallen off in a big way. Like, he wasn't even worth rostering a couple of weeks ago. We tried to have a lot of patience with that guy. But from what you see day to day with the Maple Leafs, with the hat trick, Bertuzzi, best performance of the season for sure. Like, is this the turning point for him? Is he going to finish strong in his contract year?
His fortunes are changing for sure. Important to stress the fourth hat trick this month for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Insanity. But you look at Bertuzzi right now in standard non-keeper leagues, 13% owned in Yahoo right now. Like, I think that should be higher for a variety of reasons. His look right now with Domi and Nylander, those guys have looked fantastic the last couple games. And important to stress, and this will tie into those of you who own John Tavares, he's been essentially demoted to 3C. He's on PP2. So Tyler Bertuzzi is on the first power play unit, and they're 13 for 26 since the All-Star break, PP1. I mean, effectively PP1 for the Leafs. The Leafs power play is humming at 50% since the beginning of February. Bertuzzi's just bringing the intangibles to the table. I think this is what their expectations were, a playoff performer. There's still plenty of ball game until then, but right now I would pick him up, and I just, again, you got to like who he's playing with, and PP1, the exposure to the big boys there is great news too.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a 30-goal scorer in the past as well. Like, it's not like this is a brand new Tyler Bertuzzi that we've never seen before. Great lineup placement, has proven himself in the past. The Toronto Maple Leafs have the same issue that the Devils do that you always talk about, Nick, where there's only one puck to go around, and it seems like Austin Matthews is scoring like way too many goals that no one's getting a shot. But if you're looking at other guys to add to your roster, like Tyler Bertuzzi's a no-brainer for me with where he's playing in the lineup. Like, that's like, he could go on a heater, and I would not be shocked at all right now.
Looking forward to Saturday's meetup as well between the Leafs and the New York Rangers, arguably the two hottest teams in the NHL. And, of course, Rempe and Ryan Reeves could go at it, which could be an all-star tilt in itself. Let's look at the slate for the upcoming week. You got 52 games in total. 4 Monday, 12 Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, 12 on Thursday, 3 on Friday, 13 Saturday, and 6 on Sunday. The 4-game teams you want to identify to pick up guys on waivers: Arizona, Buffalo, Dallas, Edmonton, L.A., Minnesota, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, San Jose, Washington, and Winnipeg, 11 teams. And the 2-game slates you want to stay away from: Calgary, Chicago, and the New York Rangers. And also of note, Pete, to stress over the next couple weeks, the deadline less than 2 weeks away. Hashtag asset protection. Don't forget about that on social media. Teams are going to start sitting guys as trades near, and I would look at Calgary specifically on that front.
No question. It's a huge strategy. I mean, later in the year, you're watching every game to make sure you have every guy possible playing. Yeah. Right now, you got to, maybe err on the side of caution and play somebody else that's not on the trade block if you have one of those guys on your roster. So that's a good point that you bring up, Nick. For Monday, I really like puck line Dallas Stars against the Islanders to keep that negative trend going for New York. I feel like, with Stankoven, anytime goal, if he's playing, just make sure he's playing. If Sagan's back, he might be head back down to Texas, but, I personally hope that he plays. He was knocking at the door the other day, so if Stankoven plays, I think he's scoring a goal tonight, Anna.
I like that look. I want to give a quick shout out to Seattle as well. We haven't mentioned them at all in today's podcast, and they do have a tough matchup against the Boston Bruins, but one particular player that I'm looking at is Jared McCann. He's had 5 goals, 11 points in his last 7 games, and we've seen that before from him, so maybe take a look at him to find the back of the net. And also this week, guys, looking ahead, the New Jersey Devils have to win their next game. They have to win their next game. There's no excuses. It's against the San Jose Sharks, and I'm looking at Nico Hischier for a shots prop in that one. He's had at least 5 shots on goal in 3 of his past 5 games. He's the captain of this team. He needs to turn things around.
You know what I've been playing lately, weirdly, is Boston to go to OT. 5 in a row, 6 of 7. They haven't won in regulation in 8 games, Producer Bob.
Oh, I like that, Nicholas. I cooled off a little bit with the Devils pick last week. We all liked the Devils against the Rangers, and we were all wrong, but my apologies for that. I like the Senators on the road against the Capitals. It seems too easy, but I still think Ottawa's just a better team put together, and I liked Ottawa's performance against Vegas over the weekend. Give me the Senators over Washington, who I don't know what that team is, but I like the price on the Senators tonight.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna fade you on that. I'm going with the Capitals. They're 3-0-1 in the last 4. They're beating some decent teams. They beat New Jersey. They beat Tampa.
Head-to-head pastrami time. I like it. It'll be another pastrami sandwich that I'll be able to enjoy. I still haven't gotten paid for my pastrami win. Anna and Peter are in debt. They still owe me pastrami.
We've been in the office at different times lately. But no, we'll get you that sandwich. No,
Intentional avoiding.
Hey, the other one I'm looking at too, and I'm going to watch intently, L.A. and Edmonton. They're sliding a bit, are the Oilers. I don't know what the number is right now, but L.A. They're playing really, really well under Jim Hiller. I think Edmonton's coming back to reality a bit after winning $1 billion in a row, so I think that's a pretty tasty look as well. I like dog hunting this time of year. I won't lie about that, Pete.
I like hunting down in the lineup for a guy like Daniel Sprong. Like, it's been pretty amazing to see what that guy has done. Remember last year he was like a 4th liner for the Kraken, scored 46 points. He's a 3rd or 4th liner mostly this year now that they're getting healthy, but he's still scoring. It was an acrobatic goal yesterday. I just feel like that guy is one of the best standalone bottom 6 players in the league. Top 5 bottom 6 player in the league. Always good in points per 60 and fantasy relevant once again this year. He's closing in on his career highs in goals, assists, points, and shots on goal right now with the Red Wings in a secondary role.
I want to know what Patrick Kane gave him for that number.
Probably nothing. Probably nothing.
You think so?
Honestly,
Yeah,
I think he's a good guy. I think he just let him have it. But I feel like we're back in the fall, guys. We're talking about how the Red Wings are good, the Oilers are kind of falling off, the Kings are good, the Devils are not good. It's the same story again. The NHL just goes through these cycles all the time.
Can't get too high, can't get too low, and that's the story of this podcast as we get set for later on this week, Week 20 mailbag edition. I'm sure you got plenty of questions. We're inching closer and closer to the trade deadline and obviously the fantasy playoffs. So lots cooking here on the podcast. And many thanks to producer Bob Bender for putting everything together. For Pete Jensen and Anna Dua, I'm Nick Alberga. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy and Ice delivered by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.